I wasn't on the guest list. Again, but this year when the family reunion rolled around the front desk, didn't ask for their names. They asked if they were on mine. And in that single moment, after years of silence, they had to say it. Out loud. My name. If you've ever been erased by your own blood, stay with me because this story isn't just revenge, it's reclamation. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning. Not with fanfare, but with that soft ding that usually meant a calendar update or a reminder about a quarterly meeting subject Brooks Family Beach Week 2025. RSVP. Now, Elena. Brooks stared at it for a moment too long. She sat in her glass-walled office on the 19th floor of a high-rise in downtown Los Angeles, sunlight bouncing off her framed degrees and softly humming HVAC vents. Her coffee had gone cold again. Typical. She opened the email. There it was, the family vacation she'd grown up attending, the one with bonfires, corn on the cob, matching t-shirts, and whispered comparisons. Brooks Family Beach Week was a tradition nearly 3 decades strong. The CC list was long. Aunt May, cousin Logan Trinity with her new fiancé. Even Darren, the cousin who had once faked his own kidnapping for a poker debt, made the list. But not her. Not Elena. Not for the 10th year in a row. She clicked through out of habit, hoping irrationally that perhaps she was included in a separate thread, that maybe, just maybe, she had been forgotten only by mistake. She scrolled to the bottom. No mention. Not even a typo version of her name. No Elaine, no Lena, just nothing. It wasn't that she'd expected to be included. It was the fact that her body still reacted like she had. Her heart didn't race, but her stomach curled. That familiar burn just behind the breastbone, what she used to mistake for anger. But now at 38, she understood it better. It was disappointment layered over old wounds, a quiet echo of, "You were never really one of us." Elena leaned back in her chair, blinking slowly, letting the white screen blur. She could hear the faint sounds of phones ringing down the hallway, colleagues laughing at something by the coffee machine. The world kept moving. She didn't. Not for a moment. Her hand moved instinctively to the drawer beneath her desk. She pulled out a small glass seashell, turquoise with a crack down the middle, a gift from her mother when she was 10. "For my special girl," her mother had said then. "You always find the prettiest shells." Elena had carried it across cities, jobs, relationships, but lately it sat mostly forgotten in her drawer next to expired security passes and old lip balms. It wasn't magic, but it held weight and memories. She could still recall that summer clearly, the last one before her sister Savannah became the golden girl. They were building a sandcastle together, both digging a moat when a photographer from a local magazine walked by. Savannah stood up, first ran toward the man, and posed beside the castle. She built it. Their mother beamed. Elena didn't say a word. Later that night she cried alone in the bunk bed while the family toasted Savannah's creativity. That was the pattern. Savannah got the credit. Elena got the comments. "You're too sensitive. Why do you always make things about you, you know?" Savannah didn't mean it. Eventually, Elena stopped trying to explain the invisible weight she carried. Instead, she poured herself into school, then college, then work. She climbed ladders no one else in the family even believed in. Now she was vice president of human resources at a biotech firm most of them couldn't pronounce. But success, she'd learned, didn't always translate into inclusion. Not when your family had already decided who you were. To them, she was the one who moved away. The one too busy for Christmas. The one who never really fit. And every year, they reenacted the same scene. A reunion without her, followed by photos posted online with captions like, "Family is everything." She used to call, used to ask why, used to cry. Now, she just stared at the email like it was a test she'd already failed. A gentle knock broke her trance. It was Janelle, her assistant, holding a folder. "Sorry to interrupt quarterly staffing projections." Elena took it silently. Janelle paused. "You okay?" Elena nodded with a practiced smile. "Just a family thing." Janelle hesitated, then offered a soft, "Let me know if you need anything," before closing the door. Elena placed the folder on her desk but didn't open it. Her eyes drifted back to the email. then to the seashell in her hand. Being successful doesn't mean being seen, especially not by your own family. That truth sat with her more heavily than any spreadsheet ever had. She leaned back in her chair, let out a slow breath, and stared at the LA skyline. She wasn't sure what hurt more, being excluded or realizing she no longer expected anything different, but something was shifting. She didn't want to be angry, didn't even want to confront them anymore. What she wanted was to stop feeling like her value was negotiable, that her name was optional, that her seat at the table was something she had to beg for. She looked down at the seashell again. Maybe it was time to stop chasing invitations. Maybe it was time to build her own damn table and invite no one. The rain came down in sharp threads that Friday evening, slicing across the glass windows of the Italian restaurant like needles. Elena sat motionless in her car engine, idling, half ashamed of her own instinct to double-check. She hadn't planned this. But when Savannah posted a story about dinner with someone so special at Giardino, a place Elena once mentioned loving, but was told was too flashy by her brother-in-law, it stirred something ancient in her chest. So she drove. Just to see. From the car, through the misty window, Elena spotted them. Savannah and her new fiancé, Bryce, at a corner table, glowing with candlelight and polished lies. But that wasn't what made Elena freeze. Across the restaurant, laughing at a second table near the window, sat her parents. Her mother in that navy scarf she reserved for important occasions. Her father toasting with a glass of wine, smiling, talking with people who were not. Elena, her stomach knotted, a familiar pulse of silence throbbed in her ears. She hadn't known they were in town. No text, no call, not even a wave of guilt in a voicemail. This was the second time in 6 months she'd found out her family had gathered without her. The first was at a cousin's baby shower. She heard about from a stranger's Instagram reel. She thought she'd grown numb to the pattern, but now, staring through the restaurant glass, watching her family talk and laugh and exist without her, something in her cracked. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply watched. Like a stranger might watch a scene from a movie. They were once cast in until someone rewrote the script and cut their lines. Back home, she moved through her apartment like a ghost. She peeled off her coat, her heels, her voice. The walls of her high-rise were quiet, impersonal. She sat at the edge of her bed, still soaked from the rain, and stared at the seashell on her nightstand. The turquoise glass shimmered under the lamplight. She picked it up and turned it slowly in her hand. Then she reached for her laptop. She wasn't sure what she was searching for at first. Maybe a distraction, maybe a crack in the walls of her own story. But instead she found a thread of clarity, a listing: Ocean Pines, beach house, now available, off-market. She clicked. It was the house. The one from her childhood summers. The one where her grandfather used to read poetry at sunrise. The one with the creaky porch swing and the upstairs room with hand-painted constellations on the ceiling. The one that supposedly had been sold years ago, but it hadn't been. The listing was discreet, clearly meant for private sale, and the name on the holding trust, Clara J. Brooks. Her grandmother, not Trinity, not Savannah, not even her father, Clara. Elena's throat tightened. She clicked again, and this time, the legal documentation downloaded. Deed history, transfer stipulations, and then there it was. A clause. If the primary trust holders fail to maintain financial or tax obligations for a period exceeding 12 months, the property may be reassigned to the alternate beneficiary, designated by Clara J. Brooks. Alternate beneficiary. Elena J. Brooks. She blinked. Her breath caught. It wasn't sentiment, it wasn't guesswork. It was legal. For a full minute, Elena didn't move. Then her fingers typed on autopilot emails to realtors, trust officers, records clerks, a quiet storm building. She wasn't ready for revenge, but she was ready for clarity. And that night, as she opened a forgotten file folder her mother had mailed her years ago, just more tax junk, she discovered something else. Unopened letters from the trust lawyer undelivered. Birthday cards from her grandmother dated after her death. and a post-it note in Clara's handwriting. When the silence becomes too loud to ignore, you'll know what to do. She sat still for a long time, not in shock, but in a silence of her own making. Not the kind they used to punish her, but the kind she could finally use to rebuild. Monday morning came with that California brightness that always felt slightly mocking sunshine with the weight of unfinished business. Elena arrived at her office earlier than usual, coffee still hot, resolve even hotter. While the rest of the HR team filtered in with idle chatter and crumpled blazers, she was already logged in, digging into legal databases and saved emails with the precision of a surgeon. For the first time in a long time, her family had taught her something valuable. Silence could be a weapon, but not only theirs. She began by reviewing the Clara Brooks Trust Agreement again. The clause was unambiguous if the property taxes or insurance were unpaid for a full year, or if the house fell into documented disrepair. The property would transfer fully to the alternate beneficiary Elena had. That in writing, what she didn't yet have was proof of default. So she started making calls. First to the county tax office, then to the property management company that had once handled Ocean Pines rentals, then to the HOA, which apparently had been sending maintenance violation notices for 3 consecutive quarters. Her hands moved fast, her voice calm. Yes, of course, I can send that over. Pushed her further out of heartbreak and deeper into something else. Clarity. By Wednesday, the full picture was on her desk. 3 unpaid tax cycles, no proof of current insurance, 2 confirmed structural maintenance violations, 1 clause triggered. The house wasn't just available, it was hers. Clara hadn't just loved her quietly, she'd protected her from the grave. Elena leaned back in her chair, staring at the name typed at the bottom of the clause. Alternate beneficiary, Elena Jane Brooks, not Trinity, not Savannah, not the golden ones, her. But she didn't act immediately. She consulted a trust attorney quietly in a small office in downtown LA, a woman named Miriam Gold, whose soft voice belied the iron in her legal knowledge. This clause is ironclad, Miriam said, flipping the document back toward Elena. If what you've told me is true, and the documentation checks out, we file the petition. Wait, 14 business days, and unless contested, it's mine. Elena finished. Miriam nodded. Elena didn't smile, she didn't celebrate. She simply asked, "Can we keep it discreet?" "I recommend it," Miriam replied. Quiet is smart when you're holding power. And quiet was what Elena kept. She didn't text her mother, didn't hint to Savannah, didn't post a single vague status online. She went to work, cooked dinner, replied to performance review emails, and in between, she quietly transferred liquidity from her savings account to cover any property fees ahead. Her financial independence, always criticized by her family as cold, now protected her. The truth was, she'd never wanted to win anything from her family. She just didn't want to be erased anymore. On Thursday night, she opened the drawer of her nightstand. Inside was the turquoise glass shell, now glinting beneath a piece of paper she hadn't noticed before. An old hotel receipt dated the weekend after Clara's funeral, room 406, 1 king bed guest, Elena Brooks. She remembered now she'd stayed behind to handle the burial arrangements, the unpaid hospice bill. Her mother had flown back to Carolina early with Savannah. And yet when the family eulogy was posted on Facebook, it read, "Thanks to Trinity and Savannah for honoring Grandma with such grace and love." No mention of Elena. Not even in death did they let her belong, until Clara did. She folded the receipt and slid it back into the drawer beside the shell. Then she whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't revenge yet, but it was readiness. She pressed send on the official petition that Friday morning. No drama, no fire, just a digital signature and a 14-day countdown. Let them plan their little reunion. Let them clink glasses over false stories and fake invitations. Let them think she'd stay gone just because she stopped begging to be seen. The house wasn't her revenge. It was her return, and this time, the locks would turn for her. The email came on a Saturday morning as if the universe was offering one last test of patience. Subject: Brooks Family Beach Week. Final guest list and details. Elena stared at it while stirring cream into her coffee. She didn't need to open it. She knew her name wouldn't be there, and it wasn't. Instead, the list began with Trinity and her husband, then Savannah and her miracle twins, then Uncle Darren, the drunk philosopher, followed by a few second cousins she hadn't spoken to in a decade, and finally, looking forward to another year of laughter, memories, and love, with just the core of who matters most. The word core was underlined. Elena nearly laughed. They didn't even bother with the pretense anymore, just the core, like she was a blemish that didn't fit the frame. Her phone buzzed before the coffee finished swirling. A message from Savannah's old college friend, Tessa, who now worked in hospitality at the coast. Hey, weird thing. Got a forwarded request from Trinity about the reunion at Ocean Pines. But didn't you mention something about owning that property now? Elena blinked. So they were planning the whole thing without even realizing the deed had changed hands. Booking bedrooms, choosing menus, designing t-shirts, assuming, like they always did. Is it really happening? Tessa followed up. Elena replied with a smile. Yes, it is. And I'll be finalizing the guest list myself. By noon, she was on the phone with the property management office. Yes, she told them, we'll honor the original bookings for now. No need to cancel, but all reservations must be confirmed under my name, or they'll be denied entry. The man on the other end hesitated. So just to clarify, you want them to arrive thinking they don't need to think anything? Just follow the policy. She added one final instruction. Ask for ID. If they're not on Miss Elena Brooks's approved guest list, turn them away. Next, she contacted Olive's Florals, the same boutique flower shop Trinity had used every year for the welcome table, and placed a large custom order, sunflowers, lots of them, Clara's favorite. Include a printed sign, she told the florist, something handwritten. Welcome back to Ocean Pines. This year, we remember who planted the seeds. She gave the delivery date the day before check-in, and then, in a move so subtle it almost made her giggle, she created a new email, host@brooksbeachweek.com. From there, she sent one message, not to her family, not directly, but to Olivia, her younger cousin, the one who had always hesitated before excluding her. Hi, Olivia, quick update on logistics for the reunion. A few adjustments to the check-in process this year. Make sure everyone brings ID and confirms they're listed under the new registration system. Wouldn't want any confusion. Looking forward to a peaceful, memorable weekend. Love, Elena. She hit send, then sat back. Let the whispers begin. 4 days later, the phone rang again. It was her mother. Elena came, the voice already strained. Savannah says there's been a change in reservation structure at the house. Something about you needing to approve it? Elena didn't sigh. She didn't rage. She simply said, yes, the deed has been transferred. A beat of silence. To you. Yes, Mom. I'm the owner now. She waited for the sharp gasp, but what followed was worse, polite panic. Well, that's certainly unexpected, but I'm sure you're not going to, what's the word? Complicate things for everyone else, right? Elena smiled into her mug. The audacity never died. It just dressed itself in civility. I wouldn't dream of complicating anything, she said. I'm simply honoring the guest list I inherited. Another pause. But you're not even listed exactly. She ended the call before her mother could untangle the irony. That night, she sat on her patio with a glass of Merlot and drafted the final guest list. It included Olivia and her quiet husband, Aunt May, who once called Elena after her promotion, Clara's oldest friend from the garden club, Tessa, because every queen needs a witness, and herself. No Savannah. No Trinity. No core. Let them arrive. Let them see. Let them explain themselves to the front desk. The sun was high and lazy. The afternoon the Brooks family pulled into Ocean Pines Resort. Elena was already there. She'd arrived an hour earlier, not through the main entrance, but by the private back lot reserved for owners. Her luggage was light, her presence even lighter. Inside the foyer smelled like sea salt and eucalyptus. Every detail, from the welcome table to the fresh-cut sunflowers in the entryway, had been placed with intention. Subtle, elegant, not angry, not bitter, just unmistakably hers. She stood near the large bay window of the owner's lounge, iced tea in hand, watching through the sheer curtain as Trinity's white Audi rolled into view, followed by Uncle Darren's rusted-out Suburban. And finally, her mother's tan sedan, familiar as a childhood scolding. They spilled out one by one, laughter too loud, their bodies bustling with beach chairs and coolers and expectations. None of them noticed the change in signage. None of them saw the small brass plaque on the gate that now read, "Private property of E. Brooks. Access by invitation." Only instead, Trinity marched up to the front desk like she owned the air. She breathed. Elena could hear every word from the open lounge archway. "Hi, yes, we're checking in for the Brooks Family Beach Week. Should be under Trinity Carter." The young receptionist, fresh out of college and still adjusting her name tag, nervously typed something on her screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see your name listed under our approved guest registry." Trinity blinked. "You're kidding, right? We've been coming here for years. Maybe check under Savannah or Iris." Brooks. Another scan. Another shake of the head. "I'm sorry, the reservation is under Elena Brooks. She provided a specific guest list. I'm afraid I can't." "Elena." Trinity's voice cracked through the air like a misfired cork. There must be some mistake. She's not even coming this year." Behind the curtain, Elena stepped into the archway. "Actually," she said calmly, "I came early." Every head turned, and for the first time in a decade, silence did too. "Elena?" Her mother stepped forward, lips tight, eyes scanning her outfit as if to find weakness. "We didn't know you'd be joining. You didn't know because I wasn't included." She turned toward the receptionist's voice level. "They're not on the list, but feel free to let them wait in the atrium while I check with property management." Savannah scoffed. "Are you serious right now?" "I am," Elena said. "As serious as the 10 years I spent being forgotten. This time I just decided to remember myself. A beat a shift." Olivia stepped forward from behind the group, her face unsure but her feet moving. "You invited me," she said softly. Elena nodded. "You were the only one who asked why I stopped showing up." The receptionist cleared her throat awkwardly. "Should I?" "No need," Elena said. "They can stay for the afternoon. Consider it a preview." She looked directly at Trinity. "After all, the view's beautiful. But the invitation? Well, that's what really makes you family, isn't it?" For the next few hours, she let them roam the porch and take selfies like nothing had changed. But as the sun dipped behind the dunes and the champagne cart rolled in, she excused herself. At the gate, she turned one last time. "You'll receive an email tomorrow," she said with checkout instructions. What? Her mother blinked. "You didn't think I'd let you stay the whole week, did you?" Elena smiled. "Not cruel, just clear. Ownership has its privileges, so does exclusion." And with that, she walked away. No raised voice, no tantrum. Just the echo of heels on polished wood and the closing of a door that had never truly been open. The next morning, the house was quiet. Not just in sound, but in energy. No raised voices, no boots thudding on stairs, just ocean wind threading through the open windows and the soft creak of old wood settling into stillness. Elena stood in the kitchen barefoot, a mug of tea in her hands. She stared out at the dunes where she once built castles no one photographed the summer before Trinity's wedding, consumed the entire family's attention. The air smelled like salt and lemon oil. She opened the back hallway closet, one of the few places no one had bothered to clean out. There, beneath a dusty stack of board games and brittle holiday wreaths, sat a cedar chest. Her grandmother's. She pulled it gently into the light, careful not to scrape the floors. The latch gave with a reluctant sigh. Inside, the scent of lavender sachets and old paper rose up like memory itself. At the top was a folded patchwork quilt, her grandmother's hands in every stitch, and beneath it a blue envelope marked simply, "Elena, only open when you forget why you matter." She held the envelope for a long time. Let the weight of it ground her. Then she set it aside, digging deeper through the trunk. There it was. The wind chime. Shells, pale and delicate, strung together with sun-bleached twine, a project they'd made the summer. Elena turned 10. She remembered collecting the shells at low tide, her grandmother squatting beside her with a mason jar of sea glass. "You don't have to be the loudest to be heard," she'd said. "Sometimes you just have to ring at the right moment." The chime was tangled now. Some shells cracked. But Elena didn't flinch. She gathered the pieces and carried them to the kitchen table, like sacred fragments. Outside the porch, Hook still waited, the one her grandmother had used year after year. Elena sat for hours untangling the threads, restringing the shells. She didn't rush. The waves were rhythm enough. Every knot she tied felt like stitching her life back into place. When she was done, she stood and hung the wind chime on the porch beam. For a moment it was still. Then the wind came, soft and deliberate, and the wind chime sang. Not loudly, not perfectly, but enough inside. Elena opened the envelope. Her grandmother's handwriting was uneven, but unmistakably hers. "Elena, I always knew this house would find its way back to you. Not because you fought for it, but because you knew what it meant. You never needed it for show. You loved it for the way it held people gently. If you're reading this, I hope you remember, legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we return to with tenderness. Love always." Gran Elena pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. No vindication, no headlines, just the truth, written in ink older than betrayal. That evening, Savannah showed up. She came alone. No camera crew, no defiance. Just a paper bag of lemon muffins, the kind Gran used to make, and a quiet expression Elena hadn't seen since they were teenagers sneaking out to stargaze. "I heard what you said at the desk," Savannah said. "About invitations?" Elena nodded, not speaking. Savannah set the muffins on the counter and looked around. "It still smells like her in here," she whispered. "Lavender and sunlight." Elena finally spoke. "That's how love works. It lingers, even when people leave." A pause. Then Savannah looked up. "Can I see the wind chime?" Elena led her to the porch. They stood in silence, watching it sway. "She always said you had her spirit," Savannah murmured. "I think I hated you for that." Elena said nothing. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Savannah added. "I'm just trying to remember the last time we were both loved at the same time." They stood like that, side by side, the sea whispering between them. No resolutions, no absolutions, just presence. And sometimes that's where healing begins. The letter sat in Elena's drafts folder for 3 days. No salutation, just the facts. Every time she reread it, the truth sharpened. How they'd erased her, how they'd mocked her in group chats, how her own mother had offered her childhood room to someone else without blinking. The receipts were attached screenshots, timestamps, financial records, voice memos. It was airtight. She could hit send. And if she did, she knew exactly what would follow. Explosions, phone calls, damage control, another round of, "Why are you making this about you?" But instead, Elena closed her laptop. Some wars don't need soldiers. Some truths just need time. She had already won the battle that mattered most. Being at peace in a home they tried to pretend she'd never belonged to. The beach house, now hers in full, no longer felt like a battlefield. It was becoming something quieter, something warmer. She had repainted the guest room, replaced the sharp-edged coffee table with one she found at a local vintage shop, hung her own photos not just of the beach, but of moments no one had captured for her before. Her first solo hike, the day she earned her master's, a blurry photo of her and Gran sitting cross-legged with mugs of tea and the wind chime between them. The house was beginning to feel like hers, not because her name was on a deed, but because her spirit was on the walls. She'd heard from Trinity once since the court ruling, a single message. "Hope you're happy. You've made everything harder for Mom. I hope it was worth it." No apology. No acknowledgement. Elena typed a reply. "I didn't make it harder. You just finally had to carry what you'd been pretending wasn't yours." But she didn't send it. Instead, she deleted the thread entirely. Later that day, she took a long walk along the shoreline. The sand was cool under her feet, the waves calm. She passed a couple holding hands. A woman reading under a sun hat. two teenagers building a crooked sandcastle. No one knew her. No one expected anything from her. And for once, she didn't expect anything from them either. She let herself just exist. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not as a scapegoat or an overachiever, or the one who always had to prove something. Just Elena? And in that stillness, something inside her softened. Back at the house, she found a letter waiting in the mailbox. Not from the family. From her father's old neighbor, Mr. Carrington, the retired history teacher with the plaid shirts and endless stories. Dear Elena, I saw the news. I saw the fuss. I also saw you helping your dad fix the porch railing 2 summers ago when no one else came. Just wanted you to know, I remember the girl who always offered to carry groceries for us old folks. I remember the way your gran smiled at you like you were the whole sun. You didn't take anything, you earned it. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Elena folded the letter slowly, hands trembling just slightly, not from pain, but from the relief of being seen without having to fight for it. She tucked it into Gran's recipe book under the lemon cake page and made herself tea. That night she pulled out a blank sheet of paper. Not for them. For herself. She wrote a letter she didn't intend to send but needed to say. Dear Mom, you hurt me repeatedly. But I'm learning that hurt people hurt people. You may never say sorry, but I'm done waiting for a version of you that sees me. I am not angry anymore. I'm just done auditioning. I hope you find whatever version of love you can live with. I'm choosing a different kind. She folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and placed it in the drawer beneath the wind chimes repair supplies. Someday, maybe she'd burn it. For now, it was enough to know the words were hers, and that she no longer needed them. Heard to make them real. A week later, Savannah returned this time with her eldest daughter. They stayed in the guest room and made pancakes in the morning. Savannah brought over an old photo album Elena hadn't seen in over a decade. They flipped through it together, and when they reached the summer of '96, the one where Gran had taught Elena how to braid lavender into ribbon, there was a photo, slightly blurry, sun-flared, but unmistakable. Elena's hands, her face mid-laugh, Gran beside her holding the bouquet. I never saw this one, Elena whispered. It was in Mom's things, Savannah said. I took it before they could throw it out. They didn't say more, but later that night, as the wind chime rang softly outside, Elena fell asleep, knowing she didn't need to burn bridges to build peace. Elena turned 39 on a Sunday. Not with a surprise party. Not with confetti or 100 likes on social media, but with a slow morning and the windows open wide to the ocean air. She'd lit the fireplace, not because it was cold, but because the sound reminded her of Gran's kitchen. She brewed her own tea, lemon ginger, and pulled out the journal that had traveled with her for nearly a decade, mostly untouched. At the top of a clean page, she wrote one sentence. This year, I live only in rooms where my name is spoken with respect. Then she shut the journal and got to work. The plan was simple. No themes, no speeches, no perfectly posed Instagram moments. Just dinner with people who had shown up, not out of obligation, but out of genuine presence. Savannah brought fresh wildflowers. Remington flew in from San Francisco with a bottle of 18-year scotch and a poem he'd written on the plane. Elena's therapist Marla sent a basket of figs and a note that read, Healing is the bravest legacy. Even Mrs. Donnelly came by around sunset, placing a warm casserole on the counter before kissing Elena's cheek and whispering, Your grandmother would be so proud. The table was full, but not crowded. Laughter spilled through the house like the scent of rosemary and garlic. They toasted to second beginnings and played music from Gran's old vinyls. Elena wore her softest dress and bare feet. She didn't make a speech. She didn't need to, because every look, every genuine smile, every hand resting gently on hers, said the things she'd longed to hear all her life. You matter, not for what you do, but for who you are. After dessert, she stepped out onto the porch alone. The stars were beginning to wake the moon, casting a soft silver ribbon across the waves. The wind chime repaired now sang in low, contented tones. Elena looked up at the sky and thought of the name written on the deed. Not Brooks, not daughter, not sister. Just Elena. No title, No need for permission. Her name spoken without apology. And suddenly she remembered something her grandmother once told her after a particularly rough family dinner. They can ignore your voice, baby, but they can't erase your echo if you choose to leave one worth remembering. She hadn't understood what that meant at 12, but she did now. The next morning, Elena walked the beach barefoot, holding her sandals in one hand and her phone in the other. There was a message waiting, a number she hadn't saved but still knew by heart. I saw the photos. You always did love making things about you. But I guess that's all you ever wanted, right? Attention, no greeting, no sign-off, just the same old bite with different punctuation. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't have the words, but because she finally realized she didn't need to speak to be heard. Instead, she opened her notes app and typed something else entirely. Your silence gave me space. I used it to build a life that didn't include needing your voice to validate mine. She didn't send that either, but someday maybe she would. Or maybe not. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is peace. Later that week, the deed officially updated in the public registry. The beach house now bore one name, Elena Camille Gellhorn, not Brooks. She hadn't made a big deal of it. No announcement, no email, just a quiet appointment, a legal update, and a signature that felt more like a promise. To herself, to her future, to the girl who had once braided seaweed into her hair and been called too much. On her final night before returning to work, Elena lit one candle and opened Grant's journal. There, tucked in the back, was a note she hadn't noticed before. Faded ink. Almost illegible. If they won't call you by your name, child, say it for yourself. Say it in the way you rise. Say it in the way you walk into rooms. Say it in the way you leave what no longer honors you. Elena smiled. She closed the book, walked through her house, turned off the lights, and shut the front door this time from the inside.